Right, so what I'm going to do here today is have a statement, and I'm going to guarantee you all that by the end of this presentation, you're not going to look at any of your presentations the same way ever again. Otherwise, Kevin said that he'll give you a refund. So what did I just do there? I had a hook. I've hooked you in to my presentation, and I may have resonated with something that you have a problem with, or you may have a problem with in the future. So I've hooked you into what we're going to be talking about today. But that doesn't always work, because this isn't a TED Talk. But what I am going to show you today is things that sometimes work, sometimes don't, and this is just the experiences that I've had and I've seen over the course of the last however many years. Because after all, it's your presentation that people are looking at, it's not mine. Right, the obligatory agenda slide. And this is where we go through what we're going to be talking about. So things like the structure and the approach around how to structure your presentation. Things like refinement, so how to further tune your presentation. And maybe things like stage presence, being up on the stage in front of an audience. And I'll put it to you, because it's examples of things that work and sometimes don't, do you actually need an agenda slide? So what I've done at the beginning of the presentation, I've had the hook. I've hooked you into the story. And what I've done here is gone full corporate mode with an agenda slide. And I've kind of broken that up a little bit. But ultimately, you decide. So also the obligatory about me slide. I'm up here, you're not. I'm the expert, right? So here's the opportunity for you to talk about yourself. So things like, I'm a B-Sides Melbourne organiser. I'm an organiser of TUSCON, which is the most disorganised conference in the country. But this is also where I say to you, I know conferences. I'm a presenter. I know conferences because I run one. So therefore, I'm the expert. I can tell you that I'm a speaker coach, and I have been for the past few years with Black Hat, B-Sides, and a whole bunch of others as well. I'm the expert. I can tell you that I'm an MC at many conferences around the world as well. I'm the expert. I can also tell you, by following my guidelines here, you too can be invited to MC every single one of your friends' weddings. I can tell you I'm a YouTuber, so like and subscribe. This is the obligatory about me slide. You don't always have to have it, but it does set the scene. But it can also, again, kill your flow. It's your choice. Right, let's get down to what we're actually going to be talking about. Some of the things you want to consider throughout your presentation. First thing you want to do is define the purpose of how you're going to be presenting. So are you going to inform, instruct, persuade, or motivate? So if you're informing the audience about something that they need to understand. And you can use facts, you can use figures, you can use visuals, all those things to support that message of yours. If you're going to go instructing, and it's a little bit further past informing because you're going into a bit of a step-by-step mode. And that could be, hey, let me show you how to reverse engineer this binary step by step. That's instructing. Then you're going to persuade. So if you're in security influencing, if you're in security awareness and training, if you're in a sales role, you're trying to persuade someone to do something. Buy my product, download my tool, like and subscribe. Or you're going to motivate. And this is where you do your keynotes and you have your hands like this throughout the entire presentation because it's meaningful. Or you might be in a leadership context where you're trying to inspire the troops to do something. So those are the different types of presentations you might have. Then what you have is your core message. So if I was to ask any presenter here today or any presenter tomorrow what their core message was, is how they can summarize their presentation in just one sentence, the elevator pitch, but just one sentence. If you were to ask me, my one's to inform, persuade, inspire, and show how to present technical concepts in a cybersecurity conference that resonates with the audience. And then finally, with that core message, you brainstorm all these little bits, everything about your presentation that helps build on that core message itself. Right, the next thing you want to consider is who your audience is. So you have a wide technical spectrum in cybersecurity. You have reverse engineers, pen testers, machine learning. You have CISOs, GRC, social and policy and governance. And there's a spectrum of technical expertise across the field. So what I do recommend is only choosing one, maybe two, of where you're going to target. So if you were to target GRC and ML or reverse engineering, they're opposite sides of the spectrum, so it's really difficult to hit both points or both parties. If you want to target a reverse engineer and a pen tester, it's probably going to be a little bit easier. So, everyone needs a story. We love a good story because that helps you persuade, inform, or motivate. And you can do that through things like real-life examples. So I can see some of the audience here. So hands up if you're a pen tester or were a pen tester at some point in time. All right, there's a few of you. So we have that aha moment. It usually comes on a Friday, about 4 p.m. We have this little thing that you've been working on the entire week, and you finally have that thing that, finally got it. Next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning because you've just been hacking all night. Every single pen tester, if your presentation is about something to do with pen testing, can absolutely resonate with that. Every single one of us has had that aha moment. Reverse engineers or anyone else as well has had that little aha moment as well. So that's something that you can do and you can use to connect with your audience. The other thing you can go through is case studies. So here is a problem. Okay, our problem is that we have X amount of critical vulnerabilities across our environment. What's the solution? Well, what we did was we implemented a 3-phase approach. We made a dashboard and we automated some of our patching. And then what was the end result? The end result was that reduced those critical vulnerabilities by 50% within about 6 months. So there's your case study. And then finally, you have things like anecdotes, where an anecdote allows you to connect with the audience. Because if I was to say a little anecdote about myself, I'm showing a level of vulnerability. What happens in your brain, it releases a chemical for empathy, and then you can connect with me. And then you're more likely to zone in on what I'm saying. But do you always need a story? Again, it's your presentation. You don't always need a story, and sometimes it doesn't work. If I was to present in front of a board or in front of an executive team, they're probably going to laugh me out the door if I start going into story mode. Right. The next thing you want to think about is actual structure and where do you actually start. So you can do things like storyboarding. And I remember back at school, we literally had post-it notes in my English class, and then we wrote down every single thing we wanted to say throughout our presentation, and then that was potentially something that we used to approach our presentation. Then you have the script, and I've seen a lot of people use this, and it works. It works for them. They'll literally type out their entire presentation, their mind just flows through onto the pieces of paper, and then what they come out with is a viable approach for their presentation. Next one is what I call the framework approach, and this typically helps if you're just genuinely stuck. And that could be you're doing your top, as in your title slide, your agenda, your about me. You do your tail, your questions, your takeaways, and then what you do is you just do your milestone or transition slides in the middle. So what you've done is taken a massive problem around how do I fill this time in. You've divided and conquered into individual chunks that help you really focus in on each one of those problems. You can record yourself, and I've had and known a few people that have done this. They literally go for a walk, a little voice recorder in their hand, and they talk through their entire presentation. What are you going to do? What are my takeaways? What are my contrast colors going to look like? What are the key points? What's my core message? What's my brainstorming points? They throw it all on a microphone, they get back to the office, and then they just have something to go with from there. And then finally, you have the Lukasz method. I don't recommend this one to anyone, but this works for me because that's just how my little mind works. And how my mind works is I'll think about a presentation for a couple months, and I'll have every single transition slide, I'll have my top and tail, everything, and then I spend the last month actually putting pen on paper, and then you go through refinement. That works for me, might not work for you, but these are the types of approaches you can think about. Right, so you have your approach, you have your post-it notes or virtual post-it notes. Next thing you want to do is put the pieces of the puzzle together. Right, so you have your classic structure, your beginning, middle, end, just like any other kind of structure in life. And you have your beginning where you capture the attention of the audience. You can introduce yourself. You can state the purpose of your presentation, and you can maybe even kick off a little bit of a story which goes and flows throughout your presentation. Then you have the problem-solution structure. So this is typically in product or sales pitches where you have a problem. So, hey, you have a problem, and here's my method to resonate with your problem, so you can connect through to me. Then you've identified a solution, saying, hey, all those problems that you're having, this is the solution to that. And then you go through your evidence. So you say, hey, those problems that you've resonated with me, these 3 people through case studies, they've also found the solution to their problems, help them. And then finally, you have that call to action. Buy my product, download my tool, join my GitHub repo, and contribute. There you go. The third one is around a storytelling structure. So where you set the setting, you might be the main character, your product might be the main character, or you're talking about a certain problem might be the main character. And then you have your inevitable challenge, the mountain you have to climb up, where you take the audience on that journey with you, climbing up that mountain with you. And then finally, you have your resolution and then your takeaways. So how do we get past this adversity? And because we've got past this adversity together, these are the things that you can do next week when you go back to the office. And then finally, you have your chronological structure. And I've seen this work out so well, particularly if you're an incident responder or a blue teamer. And they'll have down the bottom of their slide, literally a timeline, beginning to end. This is where we identified the threat actor. They were doing privilege escalation, then they moved to lateral movement, and then so on and so forth. And eventually you come out to a conclusion where you're able to contain and then ultimately eradicate, and here's your takeaways. APT 1, 2, 3. Right, so you have all these things, you have all your pieces. Maybe you want to go a step further and put pen on pad, and you haven't started your PowerPoint slide yet. So Emily Edgley is a professional speaker coach, and she's been kind enough to let me share this with you. And this is literally a series of objectives, openings, and then you have your core points in the center. So let's run my presentation through this. So I want to teach the audience how to present at a cybersecurity conference. Then my openings, what am I going to be talking about? I'm going to have an about me slide, an agenda. Am I going to be talking about, do I need a hook or anything else that kind of helps build that core message? Then I'm going to go through the structure, the audience, everything I've gone through to just now. Next topic I want to talk about is stage presence. What to wear, how to speak, do you move around the stage like I am now? Any hints and tips that you might want to go through as well. And then finally, you want to bring it all together. So key takeaways, further reading, what are my top 3 tips? Those are all things that I'm kind of thinking about as well. And this is a really good mechanism you can use to help. Cool. So this is a check-in slide or a transition slide. So it's my opportunity to convey to you what we've learned so far. So at this point, you want to check in with the audience to say, hey, we've talked about structure, we've talked about this. So for anyone playing on their phone, they can play catch up so you don't lose them for the rest of your journey. Also, at this point, you probably want to have a PowerPoint draft together, maybe even gone through it once. But now we're going to be going through the next section, and that's polishing your slides and things to think about to make the content really pop. Right, the first thing and fundamental thing you want to do with your audience is control their eyes. I'm moving around on stage, your eyes are on me, and your eyes are on the slides. It's very basic up there. So there's a thing called the redundancy effect, and it's by a person named John Sweller, and I'll quote, "The most common form of redundancy occurs when the same information is presented in different modalities." So what's that mean? I'm about to show you. So what I'm about to show you, and I want to prepare you for the next slide, is what we typically see in a lot of security conferences, is a large wall of text. So what I want you to do is focus on the text because I'm going to be describing it. And I want you to also to focus on, are you listening to me or are you reading the code? Ready? So here we have a Python script that's going to create a PowerPoint presentation. We're going to create a presentation object. We'll do some Python things like create a title slide, go through what's hacking, all those other things. Right. Could you hear me? Or you're focusing and reading the slides? Or were you couldn't read the slides because you were focusing on what I was saying? That's the different modalities. So let's try it, something a little bit different. This can help. I'm going to talk about this, talk about that, talk about this, talk about that. That's controlling your eyes to the relevant section on the screen. Now, what you can do also is actually prepare the audience, and let's go a step further, saying, hey, I'm about to show you some code. Here's some code. Don't read it. We're about to go through it together. So what I'm going to do is this, then this, then this, then that, and you get the gist of it as well. So this honestly takes about 5 extra minutes in PowerPoint, but it allows you to control the audience far, far greater and allows you to capture their attention a lot longer. Right, so we've talked about controlling their eyes and controlling the audience's attention when you're talking about code. How about color? Right, so I also want to prepare you for this next slide because there's 2 key points I want you to consider. Same as the one before, where are your eyes going, but also color and contrast. It's a dark room, or it's bright for me, it's quite dark for you. So if I was to go, oh, that's right. It's a dark room, and that hits you right in the face. So also, this is a very, very busy slide, because what happens is your eyes go immediately to the agenda. They probably go over to the agenda items, go down the list, and maybe finish on the little computer. Let's see how we can improve it. I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this. You're getting the point. Talk about this, 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 and then that. Remember, you're the presentation, that's your visual aid. Right, so I've gone through the contrast of text and color, images. Now, how do you do animations and GIFs or GIFs and videos? Let's go through something. And again, I want you to think about where are your eyes going during this. So I'm going to be talking about a topic that you might want to listen to, you might not. You might be focusing on the cat that's on a loop. And this is something we see quite often in a lot of GIFs as well, or GIFs. I'm on the fence. So what were you focused on? Were you focused on the cool cat that probably burnt a whole bunch of trees using AI? Or you focused on me and what I was saying as I was describing a topic, that modality? Right, the final topic. You're on stage, or not quite just yet. What I want to go through now is that you've gone through your approach, you've created your draft presentation, you've refined, you've got good contrast, you've got good color, you're controlling the audience's eyes. Now let's talk about before you jump on stage. And the first thing I want you to do is think about practice. Practice, 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 practice. You should practice so much that the presentation is boring, to the point that you think no one is going to be entertained or find this topic interesting because I'm bored of it already. After you've gone through that, what I want you to do is record yourself. Literally practice in front of, set up a Zoom session, practice in front of Zoom, record yourself. I mean, you can even use Teams if you really want to, but use Zoom. And as you're recording yourself through the entire process, what you want to do is don't stop. You might have mistakes, you might have fumbles, you might have all sorts of issues along the way. Keep powering through, because what you want to do is have a little audio note to yourself in that video saying, you know what, slide 12, I really need to rehearse that better. Or slide 15, just remove it entirely. It doesn't even make sense. That's when you start doing those rehearsals. The next thing you want to do is find one of your target audience members and literally present the presentation to them. Does it make sense? Is anything that you pick up? If they ask you questions, hey Lucas, what is an ACL? That's probably something that is context specific to your presentation. If they're the expert or they already have subject matter knowledge in the area, you probably need to expand ACL to access control list, as an example. The next thing you want to think about is your timing. How many slides per 30 minutes? How much this, how much that? It's not a science and it's not a hard or fast rule. But if you were to ask me in a very general sense, you should focus maybe 2 minutes per slide if it's content that you're going to be talking about like I am now, and maybe 30 seconds to a minute per slide if it's your intro or your outro types of slides. So in a 30-minute presentation, 20, maybe 22 is probably that magic number. The next thing I want to show you is a little trick, and this is a copy of my notes saying that at 19 minutes, I should be at this transition. And on PowerPoint, as you see in a presenter view, you can see a little timer. So then you can say, actually, I'm going fast, I'm going too slow, and you can also use that as a mechanism to expand or contract on certain points within your presentation. So throughout this presentation, there's things, if I'm going a little bit too fast, I can expand on and waffle on a little bit. If I'm going too slow, I can speed it up by removing it entirely. You ought to know when you're different. Right. So this is what you want to do when you're putting together your presentation with another person or a trio. And I've seen many duos, and I've kind of coached many duos as well, and there's always a few things, a handy hints that you want to consider when you're going through that. First thing you want to consider is sequence and handoffs. So what is a sequence of events? For instance, I've done a presentation before where it was a threat intelligence-driven red team exercise. I had my counterpart, she was describing what threat intelligence is, how she puts things together and hands it off to me, the red teamer, where I execute on those objectives and mimic that threat actor. That's one type of handoff. And we're seeing today as well, where you have duo presenters talking to one another, a little bit of banter, that also releases chemicals in your mind that you connect with the speakers as well. Because there might be some good banter going on and you're included in that. It's almost like it's a big circle of friends. It's also an opportunity to line things up. Hey Lucas, what do you reckon about presenting with duos? Well, thank you Lucas, here's what I reckon. So you can do things like set each other up. And it's a good tactic if your presentation's short, you can bounce back and forth because that naturally takes a little bit extra time. If your presentation's too long, one after one, it tends to save you a bit of time. Next thing you want to do is absolutely positively practice together. So I've seen presentations where it's split in two. You get two presenters on other sides of the world, independently working on their section, and the first time they rehearse is when they're on stage together. And there'll be certain anecdotes presenter one says, but presenter two also wants to use, so they might repeat it or not use it entirely, and it just seems a little bit disjointed. And if you do have a coach that's coaching you through, both attend, or all three of you attend. Time zones are a terrible thing, but make sure you put in the effort, because otherwise it genuinely looks like you haven't rehearsed. Right, and while you are on stage as a duo, share the spotlight. There's nothing worse than me presenting here for 25 minutes, and then someone standing over here for 5 minutes, or until the last 5 minutes, and comes into the spotlight and starts telling you about their bit. Because all the time, you're thinking, who's this person over here? What are they actually contributing to this research or to this talk? And another thing you want to avoid is taking over the active speaker. So if I'm standing over here and also saying, oh yeah, and what you want to also think about is this. Yep. That ruins their flow. It makes it sound like you haven't rehearsed, but also the audience doesn't know if you've missed a talking point. You can always bring it up at a later stage if it makes sense. And the final thing I want to talk about is the non-active speaker. So if you're a non-active speaker, spotlight's on the person here, you should be over here, arms by your side or behind your back, and just waiting for your turn to be in the spotlight. If I was walking around behind the speaker, it's distracting. If I was playing on my phone, it's distracting. You want to ensure that you're not in the spotlight. Stand aside, take a seat. Right, what to wear? Right, so I want to reiterate, you're the presentation. That's just a visual aid. So if I was to take, it's not that kind of presentation, everyone. Don't get too excited, this is as far as it goes. So if I was to take this thing off, all of a sudden, I'm wearing black, got dark jeans, I disappear into the background. I want to be in the foreground. I'm a part of this, I want you to connect with me. Also, a good trick is to avoid wearing what this AI-generated gentleman is wearing, and that's checkered shirts. So what happens with video cameras is what's called the Moyer effect, and we've seen it before, where it looks like it's like a kaleidoscope, and it's quite distracting. And in certain presentations, like Black Hat, they got, as far as the eye can see, they have people, and they have a series of screens all the way back. You talk to any AV person, and they'll say, oh, here we go. You're going to look weird on YouTube when it comes out, and also the audience might disconnect from you when they're back there. All right, microphones. I want to show you a bit of examples here. So you have different types of microphones. You have a lapel, and that's something that connects to your shirt, or maybe your lapel. And that typically sits in front of here. And I want to illustrate something that where you face is where your voice goes. If I was to face this way with the microphone on me, it follows me along. So lapels are good because they allow you to move your head around a little bit. If you were to look back, you won't hear anything on the lapel mic. And what happens in an AV desk is that that person's trying to chase your volume constantly. And then what all of a sudden happens is there's a really loud, and it's quite disjointing as well. Next one is a podium. So we have a podium here. I've seen some presenters here. And if you have a podium mic and only a podium mic, you're stuck. You're stuck to this big metal object. You can't move around. You can't interact with the audience. It's more of a university lecture than anything. And plus the microphones are directional. So as soon as you move your mouth to a different direction, what happens is that your voice is lost. The third one I'll talk about is headsets, like the one I have here. They are absolutely fantastic. But the issue with them is that not every conference has them. So you need to be familiar with how to use a microphone. What they do have a tendency to have a lot of is these handhelds. They're quite versatile because Kevin can come back on afterwards, ask if there are any questions, or introduce the next speaker. But also, what tends to happen is people don't hold them correctly. So if you have a look, I'm holding it, it's stuck to my chin because that allows the AV person to adjust the levels accordingly. So if I'm going away or coming back, they're not trying to chase me. And also, if you do look back at your slides, make sure you bring the microphone with you, because all of a sudden you've lost a word, or maybe you lost a sentence. So what I did prior to here, I genuinely researched this whole venue. I looked at photos online. I had sussed out, like, oh, there's a stage, there's a screen behind me, there's a flat room, most likely there'll be chairs. Even went back to the previous ChristchurchCon videos in 24. I had a look. There was a lectern. There were presenters up here. They all had headset microphones. So I got into the visualization of me being up here, and then I could tailor my presentation around that. Right. Next thing I want to talk about is actually you being up on stage. So you're front and center in front of an audience. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is nerves. I guarantee you, every single speaker before coming up here is nervous. I was. I queried some of the presenters here today. They say they were at some level. They say, nah, I'm not. They're full of shit. There's a person who did some research named David J.P. Phillips, and I'll have some slides at the end, where it's a great presentation on the types of exercises you can do prior to coming up here. And it's all about controlling chemicals in your brain. So what you want to do is control dopamine and oxytocin, because they calm you and they make you less anxious before coming up. You're still going to be nervous, there's still going to be butterflies in your stomach, but it just helps. Next thing, you can smile. Remember, for anyone that's ever worked in customer service and answered a phone, they always say, answer the phone smiling, because that comes through. And if I'm smiling, I'm connecting with you, and you're smiling too. I see you giggling. Right? You're smiling, that releases a chemical in your brain that you can easily connect with me, and that helps as well. And then rehearse. So if there's, for argument's sake, there's 10 things that can go wrong in a presentation, most of those things are going to be out of your control. The 5 things that are is if you rehearse, you know the subject matter, all those types of things that can be in your control, you can control. And that leaves 5 things just randomly up to chance. HDMI not working, your laptop goes to sleep, all those things you have zero control over. So you don't really have to worry about it. Computers are going to computer. And then before you talk, arrive early. I'm fortunate enough that I know the organisers. I was here last night, did a walkthrough, went up on stage, sussed out the situation, went back to the room and said, okay, I think the slides I prepared are adequate, or maybe I need to change some things as well. You can do that. If you can't, just hop on over to a flight to the US to see Black Hat or DEF CON, or to Europe. Have a look at the videos that are up online. Next thing I want to talk about is tone. Right, so you can vary your tone, just like I have throughout this presentation, because that keeps you engaged. I remember I had this database design lecture at school, at a university, monotone, 8 a.m. lecture, half the people are asleep. That happens in presentations as well. It's late in the afternoon, I want to keep you engaged, I want to vary my tone. That connects. Next thing I want to talk about is eye contact, and we're in the final stages now, so we're almost there, everyone. Is eye contact. I'll make an eye contact with yourself, make an eye contact at the front here. Sometimes you can't see all the way back, and that's okay, you might only see the first few rows, but I'm making contact with every single one of you. That also is a really good tool. If someone's playing on their phone, I'll make eye contact with that individual, because then that has a special connection between us. And that person is unlikely to play on their phone for the remainder of the talk, because whenever I do a sweep around, and I look at Tony, I can make eye contact with Tony, and then she's more likely to put down the phone, and connect with me. Right, clarity and pace. So I'm deliberately talking slowly. I won't repeat what Kevin just said. No, I'm deliberately talking slowly so I'm clear. And there's a few good techniques you can use for this. And sorry, there's a few good reasons you can control your pace. If you're presenting overseas, just say if you're a Kiwi or if you're an Aussie presenting in the US, if you slow down your voice, people are more likely to understand you. And vice versa. If you are traveling to Southeast Asia, English may not be their first language, you can slow down your pace, you could increase your clarity, and then they will understand you. They won't get lost and start playing on their phone. All right, and the final thing I want to talk about is body language. I did promise Louis I'll break dance, but I've got a microphone in the back pocket, so I won't. But body language, as you've seen, I've walked around the stage at certain parts and I'm trying to make a point. And then I stop and I make that point. And then I'll dance over here for a little bit and then I'll make another point with my hands firmly trying to make the point. We've seen the politicians going, right? That works because that emphasizes your point and you can emphasize at every single bullet point or every single point within that bullet point that you're trying to describe. Whew. All right, closing it out. So this is another transition slide. And within this transition slide, it's a great opportunity for you to remind the audience to say, hey, if you do have any questions, I'm going to be closing it out soon. Have them locked and loaded, because sometimes there'll be a handheld mic roaming around, and that's easy to just put up your hand, but sometimes there'll be a microphone at the front of each aisle. And if you do have a question, you can start thinking about it, how you're going to structure it, how you're going to say it, because you don't want to sound like an idiot. And you come up the aisle and you're ready for the question time, because there's nothing worse to say, are there any questions? Wait 10 seconds, okay, bye, but there's people waiting to get to those microphones. So there's 3 points I want to kind of talk around when you close out any presentation. Firstly, you want to summarize. You want to summarize the 2, 3, maybe 4 points that you've had within your presentation throughout that time. And we'll talk through them at a high level. You don't go deep dive into the detail. You don't want to introduce any new topics or any new suggestions because you want to summarize what the audience has seen. And then they can take notes, so when they go back to the office and they have to justify why the company spent so much money sending them there, they have their notes ready to go. Then there's what's called the Monday rule. So cool, thanks for coming along. I've listened to you for 45 freaking minutes. What am I actually going to do on Monday? Am I changing some Yarra rules? Am I buying a product? Am I asking for more budget? What's my Monday rule? What am I changing? And then finally, weaponizing of the mind. So what I want you to do is think about the best presentation you've ever seen. Why did it resonate with you? What about it stood out to you? Why do you even still remember it? I remember a presentation from KiwiCon, I want to say KiwiCon 9. It's only 15 minutes, hands down the best duo presentation I've ever seen, and it was by 2 presenters, I won't name who, but they were doing they were doing barcodes and trying to save money on fuel at the service stations, right? You remember that one because it stood out. It was entertaining, and I learned something along the way. This is how barcodes work. That stood out to me. So I want you now to think about every single time you see any presentation, what about it resonated with you? We have Alex coming up in a second, and Alex is one of my favorite presenters. He's highly entertaining, he's highly engaging, he has great movement on stage, he projects his voice very well, he takes you on a story and an amazing journey. That's my why. I want you to think about yours as well. Probably going to make him a little bit nervous now, sorry Alex. But I want you to think about when you see Alex's presentation, this has weaponized the mind to start thinking about and critically thinking about the presentations you see. And the lesson's not over just yet. So this is the thank you slide, the obligatory thank you slide. Now I have thank you up there instead of questions. I reached out to Kevin and I said, hey, do you do questions or is it just get on with it? He said, no, we're not doing questions. Fantastic. So I've offered to say, hey, if you want to get in touch with me, that's how you get in touch with me. The references are up there. And I want to remind you, you're the presentation that is just a visual aid. Thank you.
I am a super genius.